Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you here this morning. The last time I preached in chapel was the first Wednesday of 2020 in March, and I got on a plane, went to Florida, and everybody went on spring break, and no one came back, if you remember. That was the beginning of COVID. Hopefully, speaking this morning won't cause any similar kind of outcome. But anyway, I'm entitling this Sameness and the Quest for Selfhood. Over 50 years ago, I met Marina on the top of a mountain in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains against the backdrop of a beautiful lake in northern Georgia. We were there with a large group of students during orientation week at my first college, my first week. You see, after high school, I spent a year like a lot of folks in Beaver Falls working in the mill, moving furniture. It wasn't until I came to know Jesus Christ that I had any orientation in life at all. And so it happened that I was near an outdoor fireplace waiting for an upperclassman to finish cooking my hamburgers. That's what a Beaver Falls kid would want, right? And soon a beautiful, lovely young woman approached me with long black hair, a white shirt, bell-bottom jeans, and a deep dark tan that revealed her Mediterranean ancestry. I had never met a girl named Marina. Her name was unique, as was all that I was to learn about her in that very brief encounter. Marina asked me a question after our exchange of names. She queried, "What is the Lord doing in my life?" I was baffled by the question because I was not sure what the Lord was. Her accent was as thick as her black mane and deep as her brown eyes, but I soon realized that the word Lord was the Bostonian way of saying Lord. My confusion gave way to a discussion of God's work and presence in our lives, the very source of our existence as individuals, and ultimately of our shared life of these 48 years of marriage. That means a lot of these young faculty members like Matt Kikasola and Joel Ward, I've been married longer than they've been living. After my initial puzzlement vanished, I found two rather striking things about her inquiry. One was that she sincerely and deeply wanted to know who I was beyond the initial name that was mine. In other words, she wanted to know the existence that constituted me. The second part of the question was fascinating beyond all measure, and so it required some reflection. You see, it assumed that Marina was actually expecting that God would be doing something in my life, because that is what God does, and that is who God is. That is, the agent that transforms the self of existence into something more, fulfilling the design of this human toward its proper end of union with God. I assure you that she was not flirting with me or was in any way interested in me other than what I have mentioned, this deep encounter of friendship. In fact, the boy making hamburgers for me just happened to be her boyfriend, and would take months of friendship growing out of this initial encounter before our courtship began. The twofold query of that day illustrates what I would suggest to you as evidence of the continual unfolding of selfhood, learning that one aspect of God's glory that one bears in life, as Lewis would say, which we learn more fully as we live in the presence of God and ultimately as we are united with God in beatitude. It also suggests that the quest of self-knowledge, nothe suton, is a proper quest. Search me, O God, and try me. Search me out, learn, help me understand the being that I am so that I can acknowledge my sin. Or how about taking the Eucharist? Examine yourselves before you participate in the Lord's Supper. Now, when I got to graduate school, I had a most challenging course in modern metaphysics. It takes a little intestinal fortitude, I would say. This class focused especially on the questions related to self-identity. I learned to engage the problem of sameness and duration of self over time. I pondered whether the self that I was is in some way the self that I am now. I learned that the self had what philosophers called both an idem existence, that is sameness through time, and an ipse existence, the unfolding through the narrative of life, the same self one is through transformation. And as a Christian, it seems to me the latter part of that definition is so significant to us, because this God is a transforming God. He's a renewing God. He takes the rottenness of our being and he makes it into a reflection again of the holiness that he in fact is. And so not only are we idem existence, but as Christians we are ipse existence, being transformed and renewed in the image of this God who called us into being, into existence by his grace. At different points in life, one is confronted with the question of sameness. Over time, am I the same person as I was? When you students saw the picture of me as a senior in high school, do you remember that in Humanities 103? You saw someone with long, flowing blonde hair with Buddy Holly glasses. Some of you remember that, I imagine. Today, what you see is radically different from what you saw in 1971 when that picture was taken. Often the question of sameness is raised, though, during great times of perplexity. This question of self initially led to my conversion as I queried about the meaning of life as I hitchhiked around the country in 1972, until I found that the one who answered the question of life and sameness and self was Jesus Christ the righteous. Now, I must confess that I sense one of those moments of perplexity in my life presently. Now, perplexity is a word that philosophers love, but the kind of perplexity that I might be sensing in my life at this stage is more like what Christian Wyman calls existential anxiety. What about my existence? What about the significance of my existence as I age? And so I wonder about sameness in time as I age, and as I ponder the existence of changes in me. I have many experiences that reinforce why this is such a significant question at this time. Let me give you a couple examples that I have in mind. Now, when I go into a restaurant these days, I am often asked by the waitresses and other people there, "What do you want, honey?" Now, I take that the reason for this question has nothing to do with my perennial attractiveness. Dan Williams has a corner on this. Rather, she is thinking, "Oh, here is this little old fellow. Isn't he cute?" In the old age sense of that word, not the way that one thinks of cuteness when you're 12 and want that girl to like you. Or the most constant question I get from people now is this: "Are you retired?" That's what I get. "When are you going to retire? Are you still teaching at Geneva?" Translated, this means, "You're so old, what is wrong with you that you are still working?" Go play golf in Florida or something like that. And then there is the issue of lists and my being on various lists. One list is the Medicare list, where every company in the world that wants to exploit my age calls me, writes me, cajoles me every day, 365 days of the year, to sign up with them so that they will take care of my health. And then they call me monthly with an inquiry whether I would like them to visit me or not to see if I was just okay. Another list that I am on is the qualified retirement age list. That's a Geneva list, I want you to know. For several years, I was on the better side of this list. That means 2 or 3 years until retirement age. Now, I am on the downside of this list. In fact, I've been on it for 3 or more years. I won't tell you exactly how many, although some of you know. And so that puts me past retirement. Or the real kicker is when dear friends with whom I have worked and who are cherished by me do this awful thing called retire. And the result is a loss of the shared vision of transformation that fueled our lives together. Last year was an especially hard year for me because my dear, dear friends like Shirley and Brad and Daryl and the rest, and John Stahl, and also our wonderful education teacher who's a dear friend of mine, and I'm an old guy, so I just forgot it. In many cases, the problem is these folks are younger than me, but they have qualified for this retirement list as well. I want you to know that aging is scary. As someone who has had a Medicare health physical where they ask you if you know how to tell time. And so that's true. They want you to be able to point out on the clock what 2 o'clock is, you know? And so I ponder sameness. What am I to do if the retirement list is actualized? Will I still be the same self that I have been for the last 45 years of pastoring and teaching? I wish to be idiom sameness, with folks saying to me, "You will teach forever, Dr. Frazier." But how can this sameness persist? And then there is the other part of Marina's question that emerges. In this moment, what is the Lord doing in your life? This Lord does not change and is relentless in his hounding pursuit of transformative personhood, where the words, the one who has begun a good work in you will complete it to the day of redemption, ring out. Well, God meets me in the perplexity of this moment of idem and ipse existence. God does so through the books I read and teach. God does this through the friendships that I have forged. God does this through the utter excitement of being with my students, and we grow as friends as a result of this encounter. God does this through memory of significant books that I've read time and time again. One of those was written by a Jewish scholar. He was a philosopher, novelist, Chaim Potok, called In the Beginning. And it quickens me again in this moment of my life to pursue the truth regardless of cultural pressures to ignore it. After the Holocaust, where the main character is thinking about the kind of scholar that he would be, he is advised that the shallow mind is a sin against God, and that truth can go into the world of any scholarship and remain strong, even philosophy, even when you're an old philosopher. the rabbi advised David not to use scholarship as a weapon or against the tradition, or to cave to the pressures of remaining in one's tradition, but to nurture the roots of that tradition with truth. And so I return to Chaim Potok, who reminds me of the sameness of being in love. And I am encouraged yet again in the midst of change. The reality of these things make me think of what I will be doing in 5 years or so in God's kindness. And then I remember again the words of a song based on God's call to Isaiah. This call never quits. This God never quits calling me, in the words of this passage, even as I age, just like it did when I first heard his summons to preach the glorious gospel, although I am the least of all the saints. I hear these words in that song, and it gives me hope, and it gives me confidence that even as I age, this God of sameness, who was and is and ever will be the same, remains with me. I, the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in deepest sin, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright. Who will bear my light to them? Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard your calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my hand. The call of God on you is constant. The one who is the Alpha and the Omega, the one who transforms the personhood that we are. God bless you, and God bless my dear friend Titus as he comes to share the gospel.
Love it.